In this episode of the Exploring Information Security Podcast, a conversation with Kyle Andrus on info stealers and supply chain attacks.
Computers now have primary control of critical functions.
Houston, recommend vector transfer.
Your go for APU shutdown on time.
Roger, go for deploy.
Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome to the Exploring Information Security Podcast, where you learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I'm your host, Timothy D. Bluck, and in this episode, we will be exploring what are info stealers. With me to do that is Kyle Andrus, an incident responder for a top 500 company. He is a regular guest on the Exploring Information Security Podcast, where we've discussed topics such as ransomware gangs and info stealers. Show notes can be found at exploresec.com/EIS. Feedback for the show, timothy.dblock@exploresec.com. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn. And then, of course, rate the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. That helps grow the show, or knocks it down if you give it a 1-star. Hopefully no one's giving it a 1-star, but would be grateful for any feedback I can get. So this was another good one. I like having Kyle on. There's a lot of times we schedule a session and we just never release it because we talk about life and other stuff. This is a person that I just always enjoy having on the show to kind of talk about whatever. I was going to talk to him about info stealers. Actually, one of the more popular episodes we've ever had is on Emotet, which is the one that I had Kyle come on and kind of we talk through because he does incident response. And so getting his insights is very valuable for talking about some of the current threats, malware, things like that. And so, I want to have them on info stealers. There seem to be popping up quite a bit, more and more, I think, especially with the improvement in cybersecurity. You're seeing attackers going after these creds and trying to get into people's browsers and stealing all that stuff. But we talk about some other stuff as per usual in the ExploreSec podcast. So, yeah, you'll see us kind of deviate a little bit, talk about supply chain attacks. It's just usually just a really good conversation with Kyle on InfoSec stuff. And I think that's probably the go forward with him is I might try to pick a topic, but it's also kind of like, let's just see where it goes, what's kind of on his mind, what's on my mind with things currently going on. With that, let's go ahead and get right into it.
I still want to make my website. What was it? Matt Johnson and I were joking around once, and somehow we found out about the breadfruit plant, which is the best thing that you should. I mean, it doesn't really grow in our environment, but if you do, it's like one of the most highest producing like fruit trees you can get out there. These giant breadfruit things, and they're massive trees, whatever. So we're gonna make the Great Lakes Breadfruit Company, and make that website every single page be a different type of like recent type of phishing attack or type of like info stealer and all that stuff. So like. Put all those things into it so you have an example website that you can just point people to, like, check this out, this is why it's bad, or this is what it looks like. And then it could be like from the Breadfruit Company, we're just trying to expose our users to our products by using these shady methods.
That's great. That's great. Are you seeing a lot of info stealers right now?
Not like how about this? Yes. A majority like it's kind of fun. It's like one of those, you don't see successful ones because you may not see them until like after they're detected or picked up by AV on the back end when that line moves. But yeah, like a majority of what we're seeing are those types of like the click fix and the fake CAPTCHA stuff. Like all those ones are really tied into that info stealing, that initial access. Like, give me your creds, give me your session that you might have open or your token. Or going after your apps installed and extensions, all that stuff. Yeah, like we don't see any extension stuff because we just destroy that at our company. It's just off. Like we control the browser. We don't allow people to install them. So it saves that side. Same thing with the password manager, which is actually kind of frustrating. Because when you don't have like a good password manager for your company, like where do people put it? Like they're going to bring their own thing. They're going to put a notepad. So you got to find a better solution for that. But yeah.
I was going to say, so glad you brought up ClickFix because that's something I've been wanting to cover too. Like, what is ClickFix? Because I think that's like the evolution of phishing and social engineering. And I've argued our tooling and security controls are getting in a much better spot that the attackers are having to rely more and more on the person to do stuff, whereas before it didn't, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because like the click fix stuff, a lot of it's just like, or what is it? There's the like Chrome updater, fake Chrome updaters, fake Chrome or Adobe updaters, all those things. Like, yeah, click here, get it in, install it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm not gonna steal your stuff. And we see a ton of that stuff that comes in.
So what you're saying is like someone clicks on a link and then they get a page that says, "Hey, copy this code," and then put it in a command prompt, PowerShell, whatever, and then hit enter.
Yes. Yep. Well, that's what we've also seen with the fake captchas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where it does the control, and then we had an entire debate at work about like, if we do the fake capture and like to prevent that one, then we need to actually like turn off Control V, or no, it was Control R.
Is it Control R? Isn't that open a command prompt?
Yeah.
What that does? Hold on, let me see. Let me test it out.
Or Windows key R.
Windows key R.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that opens up the run. Yeah, the run. It doesn't open up a command prompt. It just opens up a run. You can type in command. But yeah, so what you're saying, they say that copy the code from the website and then put that in. And I mean, it's amazing too how good the cyber criminals are at support. Right?
Yep.
Is they're better than your typical service desk because they want people to put this stuff in and execute it, right? And then once they execute it, that's where they go out and pulls from some website. And if you're not blocking properly, it pulls from a malicious or I guess even just a regular website, right? They're not even using their own infrastructure. They're using legitimate third-party businesses that can't be blocked.
Yep. Some WordPress site that got popped and they just add it in there and then go. And it's really effective. Like we've seen a lot of them go through. Like we've gotten people where they actually submitted it, ran it. And then like we happen to have AV that basically just was on that campaign and killed it. But they still did the steps.
Yeah.
And then another one, like it would have been successful, but we actually were on top of a lot of our domain blocking, and like someone on the team's like, hey, we got to look at this and get it blocked. Put in the block, got it. Literally the next week went through and it was going to use that domain at the time.
Oh, really?
And, or that subdomain.
That's wild. So yeah, once they put it in though, is the info stealer getting installed? Or I thought I saw something recently about like Screen Connect, like a dirty version of Screen Connect getting loaded in, and then that's what loads it. Or is it both?
It's both. Everything in between. It's like whatever. It's like they're throwing everything at the kitchen sink at the time. Yeah. Like if they can get you to copy and paste code in, whether they're going to put a legit RDP client that they just remote into and start doing work on it.
Yeah.
Because it'll go through. There's most IT companies that do support are probably using some RDP.
Some of that stuff you can't block. I know at one company it was like, we're blocking this one, and this one. We're only. So that's where, your company wants to say, hey, we're only going to use this thing. But if the attackers are using it, like I know Screen Connect's a legitimate company, right?
Yep.
So you can't necessarily block that.
Yeah. Like that stuff happens and you can't, but it's interesting if you have a company that actually locks down all of that, and so that you only have like one standardized tool that you use, how much that can negate those types of attacks. But then again, like even if you have, let's say you standardize on Screen Connect, then they installed Screen Connect, but they had their version of it or their backdoor into it, or like even look at the other way that they attack and get like data and stealing is like the NPM breach that happened.
Oh my god!
Everybody lost their entire minds on it. And they're like, "Oh my god, it's the worst thing!" And then it was a crypto stealer.
Yeah, like it got caught too pretty quickly.
Yeah, like 2 hours, and they took it down. But like that is like you see like this, all these people that are in this space and this criminal ecosystem that are doing this work. They're all trying to do the same thing, but not all of them have the same goal to like destroy a bunch of machines or get control of all of them. Some are just like, "Give me your crypto." That was my entire thing. And had that been someone else, that would have been such a different, exercise for everyone to run down, check to make sure that their IRPs are up to date.
That would have been another either SolarWinds or Log4j type thing where they more stealthily put something in there and let it kind of persist for an extended period of time, and they're just trying to steal, like you said, tokens. But to me, there's this, and it's funny too, because it's like I just said, there's earlier, there's good doctors and bad doctors. I think there's good cyber criminals and bad cyber criminals too. And some people just getting like new to this stuff, but
Yeah.
and that's funny too, because everyone's like, no, you can never get into NPM, and then you have someone do it. They just want to do it to get crypto, right? They want, and all it is for people listening is essentially they put code into crypto mine, right, to use resources from wherever that NPM package was loading. And so it wasn't necessarily anything like you said that's going to wipe or put ransomware in an environment or give them access or a vulnerability that a nation state or somebody else can exploit, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I also thought about the Salesforce drift breach that occurred, right? And going back to like attackers and the security tool being better, they're going after third parties now, and they're going after these smaller AI companies. Talking to our third party guy at risk, he's like, yeah, everything's just AI now. Like he's having to evaluate, and how do you evaluate that? Because guarantee you a lot of these AI startups do not have security controls in place. And that just proliferates.
Yep. It's like you may have great standards and security controls, but now are you able to effectively audit your third parties for that stuff? And like actually, do you take their word, or do you actually have them run through a test? Like do you force them every year to give proof that they're doing that stuff? Because that's like the other area, like, you pop, either third party, or I always think about like just the tons of repositories that are out there, like the NPM one, right? Like they're developers that might be doing it for free, or they're doing it on the side out of enjoyment, and then they see it, like maybe they get burnt out on it, and somebody reaches out, they befriend them and be like, I want to be a contributor too, gain access to the repo,
or I'll give you $500 and I'll take over the project from you.
Yeah. Like those are all like real attacks that are sitting out there that we don't, I don't know, you can't even like how would you do an assessment on that? Feel like, okay, so not only like are we looking at the code in the repository, is it safe? How's the people that are running it and the contributors to it? Like, can we trust them? And are we doing assessments on them in the future?
Where's your SBOM, your software bill of materials, right? And I was listening to a podcast too where they're like, well, now SBOMs are useful. And it's like, people haven't been like, I know people haven't been doing the SBOMs, but it's like, so we ask people to do SBOMs, and we have no idea what we're supposed to do with it. I mean, it's an inventory of everything, but to your point, it's like there are, in this case, a legitimate piece of software. You're not going to flag that until it starts trying to mine crypto on your hardware, right? So yeah, that's that, and I think that's kind of the way attackers are heading too, because that gives them direct access, and especially in the Salesforce drift, it's. I think they said 700 companies. And so it's not just if you're using Salesforce in the drift environment, are there other companies that you're interacting with that have support tickets open for you or other information from you? Like, in a lot of Salesforce stuff is just marketing, right? Yep. So, because we're looking at some of this data, and it's like, how do they signed up for, a download, a guide on something with this company. And that's why their contact information is in there. But then there are other companies that it's like you open up a support ticket with them, and that could potentially have sensitive information in there, because they might ask for not necessarily creds, but certain internal things or internal information. And like that was a little bit more of a sophisticated attack to say, because they were in there since like March, I think I saw recently.
Okay.
They had owned, I don't know if you've seen it, and this came out within the last couple of days. They had owned the GitHub for it. And that just then, getting into drift. And then once they got into drift, they sat there for a little bit to recon the entire network and see what was going on there. Where were they at? Who was all talking? Oh, this company's talking, Cloudflare's talking to us. Zscaler's talking to us, you know. Some of the other one, HackerOne was on that list. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's like a site called, I think it's like driftbreach.com or something. It's got all the list of people. Yeah. I've been tracking it I've been help tracking it for work, because that's part of my role too, as far as security awareness goes, is seeing what's the latest things and either writing up an executive report or, informing other people, or in my scenario, I have been asked to fish several
different groups at this point just to see kind of our risk level there, right?
That's a great website, the
Isn't it?
driftbreach.com.
I started it on GitHub because I couldn't find anything, and then I saw that, and so I just put up on my GitHub page, yeah, go here to this site. But I had started tracking it. But going back to your AI use, I actually was using AI to go, because now you can have it search that day for stuff. And I said, hey, can you give me this? Can you enrich this? Can you add the details? Because like that's something, if you're having to do something manual like that, you shouldn't have to. I should just be, okay, tell me what's new, give me it in this format, and then I just update the GitHub page. And I probably could even do another step of just automating it and going, giving it like login to my GitHub page and saying, go update, this GitHub page with whatever. But yeah, once that site came up, I was like, it's got a lot more detail than I planned to do. Put work in. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But again, that's why I also asked about info stealers, because we were going to talk about info stealers, but I feel like this is just a different topic, because I don't know, man. Like I see all sorts of threat reports, and it's like ransomware is increasing, phishing is increasing, info stealers are increasing. And then it's like, well, no, they're going after the third party. So it's like, I don't know what you've seen as far as, because you said, yes, we have seen it, but it's also,
It feels, info stealers also feel like, I'd say they feel like commodity many times, right? Like the mass hits that you get across all your AV. Like you're always going to see like, and it's going to be inside of like, possibly unwanted programs. It's going to be in specific like info stealer type alerts that you may have, or it's going to be associated with like any behavioral stuff you got going on, or if you're actually tracking well, like, what if you have like the top 1 million domains type setup, where you can actually see like your company and like everything that's gone to it in the last 1 million domains, and then subtracting all the new stuff that comes in is like, is that actually something we should block? Is it should not? Like if you're not blocking unknown stuff, like that's like a lot of the day-to-day that we see that stuff. And then like seeing successful stuff, you don't see as often, but that they're probably being successful in different areas. We just don't see it yet or haven't detected it yet, or it's going to come down the line. Like honestly, like info stealing, just actually calling the person up and asking them and getting that data and information too, depending on the level that they want to go to.
Well, yeah, you're talking like, so I was thinking more just like malware info stealers, right? Because I went to the ISSA conference in Nashville last year, and someone was talking about info. I'd heard about info stealers. It makes sense, especially because attackers, this is another report, attackers are still going after credentials, which is true. They get credentials, get in. And info stealers, too, I think, get to the point of stealing credentials, MFA, session tokens, all this kind of, which is what they want to get into an environment. But there is a social engineering aspect, which I don't know that I consider it info stealers. I consider that more of like a social engineering targeted attack. But
true.
Like, are you seeing these as like desktop applications, or I feel like a lot of them are just browser, right?
They're usually targeting browser based, apps as well, like on mobile. And I feel like that the visibility we have on mobile sucks. If we ever got better, if we ever got better visibility, we'd see more of like info stealers that are executing there and getting into app data more, or getting that data. But otherwise, they're aiming for your browser extensions that you got installed. Do you have a crypto extension installed that they can steal and grab the session from or something? Do you got your passwords stored in the browser? All those components are being there. And then the actual malware that might run, that'll collect anything on the system itself. Grab the actual person's, password out of memory potentially, if it's that aggressive or it has that capability. We haven't seen that. We've seen execution that tries to get there, but we've seen all blocks on that stuff. For that, it's just like we're getting old stuff on, I feel like, on that side. But I thought it was interesting with info like stealers is that they kind of supply and prompt up all of our like ransomware groups and cybercriminal groups that basically then use that information to do targeted attacks. So they're like that initial access, like an ecosystem that's massive. So all these people stealing data, selling it on your dark web or some Russian market, or an invite only type of like place to buy and sell data. Have you ever heard of like logs, like that when they steal data, they'll put them into like a zip file, but they call them logs. And so you can buy an info stealer log basically of data for like $2 to $10. if it's just kind of generic data where people are just getting information thrown in there. So you go to the dark web, you go in there, you'll look at you'll search just like a marketplace. Like I'm looking for Apple credentials, and I'll show you all the buyers and sellers that are out there, or mostly sellers that have it, and you go pick it up, right? It's just kind of nuts. Like you can be really targeted, and so that's like fueling all these other cyber criminals that are like, yeah, we don't do the initial access part, but
we're just going to go buy the access. Yeah.
But we'll just buy it and do mass and go. Or hey, I'm trying to target, a certain industry or a certain company. I'll go on the market and try and find credentials that are related to the individuals I'm targeting there and go after them. I think that's kind of the crazy part when I think about info stealers is like, it's just like that initial recon and mass for the entire cyber criminal system.
Are EDR tools able to see the browser into the browser and like identify that stuff? Or is that like just a whole different ecosystem?
You can see a lot of the component, like if depending on how sensitive your EDR is, right? So if there's like a piece of malware executes and it's reading like actual system files, you could have stuff that triggers on that. I've seen generic like info stealer EDR stuff where they've got characteristics of the known info stealers they got that'll trigger, and it's usually based on either file activity or usually network too, right? Because it's going back to known places, or like, hey, this random executable just on your computer, it touched the Chrome exe that was running at the time, and then it made a network connection out to paste dump. Like, okay, well, that's something we should probably look into and look into it, right?
Yeah, so it's following the traffic, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it might not always see exactly what they took or what they did, but you're usually going to see the execution side of it, and then potentially the behaviors that either the vendor's seen or maybe you've done your own research and you built your own rule for it. And then the other side is the network exfiltration part of it actually getting off the system out to somewhere.
Yeah. Are they? Well, I guess they kind of are. So I've been reading about the fact that, because that could be another trigger, right? If it's something going out to .xyz domain, right? Versus, I feel like a lot of them. I think a threat actor just got kicked off like Google Calendar after being there for several months, but they're using they essentially go to a third-party legitimate site that they know is not going to be blocked, and then it's like a couple different hops to their actual malicious servers where they can go then sell it to people who want access. So
dump into a Telegram account.
Yep.
Dump into IRC, Slack.
Are people still using IRC, man?
I mean, who doesn't? I mean, everybody's using it. It's the coolest thing.
I don't think anybody new to InfoSec. That's not true. I think very few people new to InfoSec would know what IRC means.
I kind of want to check
or what it even is.
Yeah. I bet you there's still some people alive on the MySec IRC that's out there.
Oh, I'm sure people are still alive, man. I'm sure there are still people. So there's a server somewhere where people just are still on it, but I don't think anybody new to the field knows what that is. And I'm going to let them Google that instead of us explaining it. I do think browsers are getting better at trying to identify or combat info stealers. Would you agree with that or disagree?
I think they've made good progress. Like you're starting to see more like, especially like extensions, like malicious extensions that steal data. Yep. I think they've gotten better at finding ones that are malicious in nature or ill intent. I think they've done better at that.
Well, I just feel like they have more controls. Like especially if I'm using it on like my personal device, I have to put in like my PIN, and not that my PIN is super secure, but it is still a PIN that I know that the attackers might not know they can get to it. But I don't know if they're like attackers. I don't know if there's info stealers that are circumventing that or what, but
I'm sure it's cat and mouse game. Eventually they'll get there, right?
Well, and I've just seen more integrations within browsers too, of like even password managers, right? So if you use a 1Password, a Dashlane, a whatever one, I feel like they are getting more integrated, because I don't know about you. Well, what InfoSec advice what advice would you give to someone about using stored passwords in their browser? Would you say it's okay, or would you say don't do it?
I'd say don't do it, just because they're so targeted. Like get something that's not as common or separate from the browser if possible. Just because
As far
it's
as like password managers.
yeah. Like I would just not keep anything in the browser. Like I know there's like Chrome and Firefox, they all have their own like password manager inside of it. And just because it's so popular, so many people would use it because it's by default and you almost can't turn it off on Chrome. I think it always wants to save your password and you're like, no,
Yes.
forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's going to be targeted forever. But yeah, I would recommend they try not to use the built-in browser stuff and be really wary of extensions.
Yeah.
I'd love to know more about, like, if you're creating an extension, what are the things you can do to protect your extension that you create from like info stealers? Is there additional encryption you can do, or is there ways to protect your data in the browser from these types of attacks, or is it just all useless because eventually if you own the browser, then you probably own all the controls that allow that extension to work, and they can override and steal your crap and just be jerks.
Yeah. Well, so I'm on the other end of that. I think it's fine to use password managers in the browser. Just because I think there is I don't discount like your thing. You probably see it a lot more than I do. The guy at the InfoSec National Conference, like I mentioned, he talked about don't ever use this stuff. Everyone else in cybersecurity that I talked to is like, don't ever use this stuff. But I'm kind of like, do you want strong passwords, or do you want them not to use their password manager, right? Because I feel like there is convenience to using password managers in the browser. I don't need to remember it. I can, like you said, Chrome, Edge, whatever, right click, suggest strong password when I'm filling out for a website that I don't care about. Now, again, yep. I use unique passwords for some, and this is what I tell people too at advice at work when I'm doing like orientation or talking to people outside of cybersecurity is, I remember the passwords for the stuff I need to remember for, which is email, because everything's tied to email, bank account, just think about anything else. But everything else, it's like I should just generate it. And I think password managers are good for that. So I wouldn't necessarily put maybe some certain things in there. But I will say too, I think it's just fine, especially if you have MFA set up for this stuff too. If you go in and set up MFA for it,
yeah,
because they still need that to log in. But I just like asking people, especially like you, because I know you see this stuff all the time, so it's out there so much. But
yeah, I'd say my caveat on it though is like having a browser extension that does your password manager, I think is like LastPass, for example.
Absolutely.
That one I think is like you're in a much better spot. Using the built-in one, I think is just more targeted, and so it's more likely. So it's like, it's your risk tolerance. Like, yeah, definitely password managers all the way. By the way, you have to today.
Well, and here's the thing: get your grandma to use a password manager.
Yeah.
She can barely turn on the computer. I mean, I should say grandpa, just so I don't get dinged.
Grandpa, anybody who's not tech savvy.
Yes, and yes, that's probably the better way is the non-tech savvy people, and that's kind of, and that's the thing right now too, right? Is seniors are getting hit up, but I guess it's more scams than info stealers because they're not even really using the technology; they're just having someone call them and dump their retirement into.
But they're also the ones most likely to fall for those, whether it's the click fix or fake updates, all those other types that are out there that. They get that pop-up that says, hey, you need to download this Adobe patch because you're infected. They click Adobe, it's installer.exe, and they get popped.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I got a call. I think this is about 12 years ago from my brother who was working at a nonprofit, and he called me freaking out because he had walked by someone that was talking to tech support at this nonprofit. They didn't have tech support. So I had to walk him through and it was just this, lovely little old lady that unfortunately was working with a tech person and doing it, like you said, the click fix and other stuff. So, but I mean, I'm starting to rethink a lot of just getting back to the advice piece. I'm starting to rethink some of our advice because I don't think we give so much advice. I actually want to go to ChatGPT or Gemini and go, give me all the InfoSec advice you have in your database. And I'm curious what it is. And that's where I want to challenge people too with like, do you want strong passwords or do you want people to use password managers with, or not use password managers, I guess would be the thing.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Like, but I was like, password managers are such a pain in the ass, man. Like I use them still. But again, sometimes it's like, I don't want to use those. I'm a very lazy security person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm a good litmus test too, by the way, for people outside of cybersecurity, because I understand this stuff, but those people outside of cybersecurity, they're lazy too. They got all the shit they're worrying about. They don't need to worry about me telling them use a password manager, don't use,
Yeah. You know what has to make a comeback is also like, we actually like clean our browser and actually like clear our cache every once in a while.
Is that a thing you have to? I don't do that.
I don't do it often either, but you think about the amount of data that's there, that's cached or like sitting around, and all the website trackers, like they've got great data inside of them. So if you're trying to build a profile on somebody, you want that data too. So they can use that as part of it, especially if you're being targeted, right? But even if not, like one of the big things is like if you find a way to run an info stealer across millions of people, the data you get back is worth a lot of money. Not as much because you got a bunch of like grandma and grandpas and don't really have that much, but the fact that you might have the credentials or information on someone else on that marketplace wants to buy. So when they do their search looking for Walmart security people, and oh wow, this recent dump in this log that we got here, it looks like it's got that. I want to buy that. Like you get picked up in that large net.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'll say too, is that like I pick and choose where I'm doing it. I also don't install a bunch of extensions.
Yeah.
On my browser. Like I'm not grabbing random things to. Again, this is me getting old and not just embracing some of the technology that I know probably could make it better. But that's why I would like, and I think you're right. You said it earlier, is like, what's your actual threat vector? If you're installing extensions, if you're browsing the internet randomly, like I have set sites I go to, which I know again can be compromised, ads, other fun stuff. Write no script, which is what I used to use to deal with the ads. Now I just again kind of lean on my Defender and people that actually clean up that stuff. But I don't, and you and I can spot a click fix. We can still fall for fishes, but we're gonna spot like 99% of the fishes that would be targeted. I don't go through my spam folder, but there are people out there that do all that stuff. They just click on stuff. They click on, those ads that say, hey, come, get an insurance discount in your state, and it's like a pretty woman, on the ad that has no relation to it, whatsoever. There are people out there doing that. I would not recommend those people use the password managers, or if they are, to get a legit password manager. But it is kind of a, like I said, convenience thing, and that's what we have to balance within security.
We do, and it's this is why we still have jobs forever, is because it's always been a cat and mouse game where new tech comes out, browsers get really awesome, prevent and stop all these attacks. Well, give it X amount of time, these creative individuals will find another way around. Then that'll be the new hole, and then we have to chase that one until it gets fixed. It's like, we're doing that forever.
That to me, I've been thinking about that. Is just, that's life, man. Like this is like we're never going to solve the cyber criminal problem because there's enough nations that are okay with this stuff going on. One of the things I've started diving into a little bit more is like the pig butchering stuff, and the fact that, like we're talking about the seniors, they have entire complexes now stood up with barbed wire and fences, and they're essentially grabbing people off the street and putting them in these complexes and make them work 16 hours a day. And there are some countries that allow that kind of stuff, and it's crappy. And unfortunately, those countries are led by people that are crappy and allowing this stuff to go on. So there's just a lot of bad people in the world, and it's just, this has always kind of been the path. There's going to be, I think, progress that we're going to make. Law enforcement seems to be getting into it. More cybersecurity jobs are opening up. More younger people are getting in that I think are going to help solve some of these problems, or at least mitigate them. Maybe that's the best term. Is it's never going to go away. It's just going to get mitigated, and there's going to be new people willing to play the cat and mouse game and really go after these guys. So I'm curious to see what and I feel like it's very like the cyber criminals are very much like water. They're going to go with what's the path of least resistance. And so, like I said, I think security awareness is going to get spotlighted even more because the security controls are getting better. People are getting smarter, able to identify this stuff. And now either they need to up their game, because I still see some, I'm sure you see it too, some really bad phishing emails.
Yep.
But all you need is 1 out of 100 people to click on it.
Yep.
And you're in, you got their credentials, and out, sometimes your controls can fail, right? And you've done everything right. And it's just this one little gap at this one little time that gets things compromised. But that's where the whole defense in depth and other stuff is happening. But it's just gonna, there's gonna be people carrying on well past the time that we're involved in. They're gonna have new problems to solve that aren't gonna be my problem.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Then all right, this is just something that came to mind because it really blew my mind that this was being done. So mobile phones, and you'll always get, like my dad, for example, his phone was being slow. And so he's like, oh, I need to find an app that can make my phone faster. And so you go down that train and he should not
save his passwords in the browser, by the way. But
correct.
Go ahead.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So he was looking for something to help, and he's got an Apple phone, so his Apple Connect or accounts connected there. But I helped set it up, so I actually get like emails that he like orders and buys stuff. I gotta like actually fix that and have it go to him. But right now, it actually helped a ton because he went through and like was trying to just solve his problem. And he found something that worked, and it was a legit tool that does some type of cleanup, who knows what, but it was charging like $15 a week.
Ooh.
And so like, he didn't know that and didn't see that. Like I just feel like it's another way to sucker people in and get money until they realize after a month, they paid $60 already, and like they cheat that way. So like you've got like legitimate programs that are out there that just steal money from people. You've got the malicious ones that sneak in to try and steal it, and
yep,
it sucks out there.
Scams are just in general. It's like doesn't even have to use any sort of malicious technology or info stealers or anything. They just, like you said, that's another thing, right? That's part of the third party stuff. Is some organizations, anyone can go into the Microsoft store, grab an app, and give it permission to your environment. Like that is scary right there if you don't have that locked down.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts
from like the business side? Things that a business I think has to take into account more is their risk. Like, do they want to have internet for their employees that anybody can go to any site and just download any software and run it, or do they want to mitigate these risks of all these info stealers that are out there and malware and just everything under the sun, right? And actually start locking down and controlling the internet access and the actual sites that they go to. And it's a really hard thing to do because that's when you actually have to start spending money on your cybersecurity program if you haven't already. And I know like large enterprises, yeah, that's part of their budget line, and they get it checked off and they're all good. But like you look at those smaller like mom and pop stores that don't have that kind of control. They got like the Comcast business, DSL line still running. And like, things that they can kind of do to protect that and lock down, I think is a lot harder. It's almost like you can make like a strategy of like, hey, you're a small business, these are the things that you could do. Medium-sized business, maybe think about getting these controls in place, or, actually buy a web proxy filter or something for your company and actually lock it down. Block all unknown sites. Anything uncategorized would save you a ton of time and effort. And like that's the stuff it's tough because you got to actually start spending money and time to do it, and the care and feeding for it. But they're also highly effective.
Well, and is it worth it too, right? Because again, these are small businesses. Sometimes these aren't going to be. I mean, it happens. Not saying it happens, but like you said, they can spend time on security, or they can try to drum up business that they need to actually still exist. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah, that's a tough problem that I don't think is easily solved. But everyone, there's a bunch of new companies trying to tackle that. There are companies focused on small medium businesses, which I think will help. But that's also, I think, why I kind of like this podcast too. Is it should be for people in cybersecurity, but also outside cybersecurity. But all right. Cool. Well, thank you for joining me to discuss. I don't know what this is going to be. It's supposed to be Info Stealers, but we talked a little bit about everything, AI, some other stuff. So I think you and I should just set up some time randomly and just get on and talk about whatever you want, which is always great too, by the way.
Yeah.
I also like when we're like, hey, we're going to record, and then we just start talking about life, and it's like, well, this isn't going to be a podcast. That's always fun too, by the way.
Yeah.
So love having you on. Thank you for joining me.
I appreciate it, man. I always enjoy the time, and it's always fun either hearing ideas that you've run across or things that you're currently pursuing, and then many times like, oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense. That's the last thought.
Love it.